Richard Harlow was not the kind of man who slowed down for anything. As the founder of one of the most successful real estate companies in New York, his mornings were a blur of conference calls, board meetings, and investment decisions worth millions. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from. He wore his wealth like a second skin. Tailored suits, a penthouse apartment, and a black SUV that rarely stopped for red lights. But beneath all that polish, there was something missing. Something he could not quite name. Not until that cold December morning, when his 7-year-old son, Oliver, said 4 words that cracked him wide open. It was the week before Christmas, and Richard had taken Oliver to the local grocery store, something he almost never did because he had people for that. But his housekeeper was sick, and Oliver had begged to come along, excited by the holiday decorations and the smell of cinnamon in the air. Richard was distracted, scrolling through emails on his phone while Oliver wandered just a few feet away near the holiday display of turkeys and canned goods. That was when Oliver tugged at the sleeve of a woman standing quietly in the aisle. She was elderly, maybe 70, with silver hair tucked under a worn wool hat and a coat that had seen too many winters. She was holding a frozen turkey with both hands, turning the price tag over slowly, her lips pressed together. In that particular way, people press their lips when math is working against them. She set it back down gently, as if it deserved care, even in rejection. Oliver watched all of this with wide, serious eyes, and then turned back to his father and whispered loudly, the way children do when they think they are being quiet. "Dad, she can't buy a turkey." Richard looked up from his phone. He saw the woman. He saw his son's face full of genuine worry, and something inside him shifted without warning, the way ice shifts just before it breaks. He put his phone in his pocket. He walked over to the woman slowly, not wanting to startle her, and he introduced himself simply as Richard. He asked her name. She told him it was Eleanor. She smiled with the kind of grace that comes from a lifetime of making do, and she told him not to worry, that she would figure something out, that she always did. But Richard had already made up his mind. He picked up the largest turkey in the display and placed it in his cart. Then he asked Eleanor if she would walk with him through the store, because he wanted to make sure she had everything she needed for Christmas dinner. Eleanor looked at him for a long moment, studying his face for any trace of pity or performance, and finding neither, she nodded. They walked every aisle together, Richard and Oliver on one side, Eleanor on the other, filling a cart with potatoes and butter and green beans and cranberry sauce and a pie she mentioned was her late husband's favorite. Oliver held Eleanor's hand the entire time, chattering about Christmas and his dog and his school play, and Eleanor laughed a real laugh, the kind that fills a grocery store aisle with warmth. At the checkout, Richard paid for everything without fanfare, but before they parted ways in the parking lot, he did something no one expected, not even himself. He asked Eleanor if she had family nearby. She shook her head softly and said her daughter lived 3 states away and could not afford the trip. Richard took out his phone, not to check emails this time, but to book a round-trip flight for Eleanor's daughter to come home for Christmas, right there in the parking lot, and he handed Eleanor the confirmation number on a scrap of receipt paper. Eleanor did not cry. She simply held that piece of paper against her chest with both hands, closed her eyes for just a second, and said thank you in a voice so quiet it was almost a prayer. On the drive home, Oliver was silent for a while, which was unusual for him. Then he looked at his father and said, "Dad, that felt better than any present." Richard did not answer right away. He just reached over and held his son's small hand on the console between them, and he thought about how a 7-year-old boy had just taught him more about wealth than 30 years in business ever had. That Christmas, Richard Harlow started a foundation in Oliver's name, dedicated to helping elderly individuals in need during the holiday season. What began with one turkey became thousands of meals, hundreds of reunions, and one father who finally understood what it truly meant to be rich. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel Kindness True Stories, because the world needs more of this.